we do want to turn towards discussion about, if we're a model community, kind of what things are important, start thinking about the future. But first, as we did last time, I'm going to quickly run through a few models looking at water supply and availability. So these are things other communities in the West have done. These are going to be very quick. Denver water. Denver isn't much like us except for the fact that they get about 16 inches of rain a year. But in 1981, they coined the term xeriscaping, which is landscaping with low to no additional water once it's established. And they did that in the face of a drought in the late 70s, plus a reservoir that Denver wanted was not coming through. And so they basically read the Riot Act to a bunch of landscapers and introduced this term saying, we have dwindling future water supplies. What can we do? This is the conservation end. But I wanted to say, looking at Denver Water's program now, is xeriscaping is just one part of what they're doing to incentivize and in some cases establish rules to conserve water. They do xeriscaping, do a lot of outreach. This is one of the gardens, the demonstration gardens, the picture. They do water pricing, which a lot of communities do, including, I think, the Water and Sewer District, to try to get people to use less water, particularly for irrigation. They have watering rules, and these are not voluntary in the summer season. And then they do rebates. So again, they're using a mix of tools all aimed at water conservation. It's been pretty successful. Their goal was to move from 211 gallons a day use per person in the Denver area in about 2006 to, in 2016, their goal is 165 gallons of use per day per person. So that's everything: showers, water, irrigation. So they're doing it. Next up, our neighbor downriver is the city of Bozeman. I wanted to ask, since I know for sure some of you, who worked on the Integrated Water Resources Plan in this room? Could you raise your hand? Okay, at least you two, three. First of all, I made them raise their hand because they're experts on it and I'm not. But I did link to it in our resources page. But one of the things I really want to highlight here is this is a plan looking forward 50 years. And it's integrated. So that's something to think about as we move into our next phase, is what kind of time frame and how do we connect these different things together. Got a water conservation program. That was a pretty big deal to hire someone. A lot of education and outreach, rebates and incentives. It has modest water pricing. I'd love to really see some data on how effective their unit pricing is, but it is a feature. There's a drought plan, and as was mentioned in the panel discussion earlier, they are looking at additional new sources, mitigation sources, and storage. Let's see, why am I not turning? Oops, too far. Okay. So we've been talking, I feel like this slide is really stormwater part 1. Stormwater part 2 will come in our next meeting with wastewater treatment and disposal. And Pat alluded to both some of the natural things with wetlands and a little overlap with stormwater. Los Angeles is sort of the, I guess in some ways you'd say, the logical extreme of what happens when you have no water and lots of demand. So they look at this as what they call as part of a portfolio of water sources. This plan was finalized in 2015, and what they're doing here is, so the buildings are LA, mountains are the San Gabriels, the spreading down grounds, which they have a system they're putting in place of both centralized and dispersed infiltration sites, is the San Fernando Valley, basically. It's going into the groundwater and going to come up, treated and reused. So this is sometimes called toilet to tap or showers to flowers, depending on just which sort of spin people want to put on it. The Arid Lands Institute, which is located in the area, has modeled where 92,000 acre-feet of water could be directed using this. I linked to it. The model's amazing. They've gone block by block in the San Fernando Valley. One thing I want to say, and the panel started bringing up, but stormwater reuse requires a water right in Montana. And so if you really want to start exploring some of these, We also need to look at the implications with existing water rights in Montana, and as some of our panelists alluded to, whether there are policy changes we might hope to support.
It bears mentioning too that LA's whole focus on that 2015 plan came out of a decade and a half of litigation surrounding their stormwater pollution.
Yep.
And that what I mentioned earlier in terms of municipalities having stormwater requirements, that literal plan is the result of how LA is planning to meet, on one hand, its pollution contributions via stormwater, and on the other
Yep.
hand, the mandate that they need to do essentially low-impact development practices to get back to pre-development hydrology. So while obviously there's not a municipality here in Big Sky, it should be a conversation piece moving forward, because that could be an actual tool in the tool belt so as to address those types of issues moving forward. So good conversation piece.
And that's really helpful, and thanks, Guy, for adding that. And again, I feel like this is Stormwater Part 1. We're going to talk about some of those pollution control things next time. But it's an opportunity, potentially. Okay, water recycling. I used Los Angeles, but really, you can go throw a stick anywhere in the West and start seeing some interesting things. As you know, treated wastewater has been used on the golf courses for since 70s, you guys? How long has it been? Forever? 70s. So this should not feel super alien to this community. What's interesting is how much LA does. Lake Balboa over there use recycled water. They use it on cemeteries and parks. This is pretty standard for most of Southern California. And again, we talked about the groundwater replenishment. And then the last thing, those pipes down there, I want to talk about purple pipe distribution system. Basically, you take effluent, filter it, treat it lightly, and recycle that water. They use purple pipes to coat it as non-potable recycled water. Those pipes were established in the Irvine Water District in, I think, 1961, and they're pretty widely used in certain parts of the country. But again, you can go a lot farther potentially, there's issues, than Big Sky is right now. And then the last thing, Pat, I knew was going to talk about the one that's in development in this area. This is a mitigation bank. It's the Grass Valley French Ditch. And if you look, Missoula International Airport, this is the west side of Missoula. And again, does this look a lot like the valley from the air, our valley? Kind of same thing. Grass Valley French Ditch. Took 7 years. Carrie can tell more than I can about the whole discussion with the MRC. Pretty extensive process. But what's important for us to think about is this bank hasn't fully established itself because it's not clear how well the sales of shares are going. In fact, if they've sold any, as far as I can tell, it's not publicly available. But they've gotten all the way through the bank process. And so if we want to look at examples, this is a way to look at how they did it. And part of what they're trying to do is keep water in the ditch for the existing irrigators, as well as sell mitigation shares, not the rights themselves, to other users in the area. So again, things to think about. And the reason I didn't take mitigation banking in other states is our water rights laws give us a different suite of options than other states, so it's kind of hard to compare directly. So those are some examples.